received has been difficult and mysterious. Put simply, it's the presentation of a counterfeit food item to a feeding fish. The fly is an imitation food item, usually an insect. Which fly to use is rarely a simple choice. To be successful, a fly fisherman must have a keen knowledge of the natural world, as well as good casting skills. Fish will often refuse fly after fly. This is what fishermen live for. The more difficult the fish, the better the day you've had. Charles Woolley grew up in Tasmania and returns here to fish the lakes whenever he can. I managed to catch up with him on the shores of Lake Bronte. At the time, he was doing an interview with Darwin-based fishing journalist Alex Julius.
Okay, let's get it here. What's he got? Stick cats?
Stick caddis, damsels, blue damsels. Absolutely chock-a-block with caddis cases. Where'd you catch it on?
Lift your head a bit, Joe.
An emergent dun, a little dry.
All right.
Yeah, I'm in Tasmania to do a story with Charles Woolley for our magazine, NAFA, which stands for National Australian Fishing Annual. And, he's telling me about the trout down here and how great it is, so I thought I'd come down with him and check it out. He's Tasmanian, as you're aware, and I have entangled with trout for about 25 years, and I've never fly fished for them. And I have done quite a bit of fly fishing in the tropics, so I thought I'd give it a go. I mean, it's terrific down here, there's no question about that. At this stage, I'm yet to pin one, but I've got quite a few photos of Charles doing his thing, which is probably the most important thing at this stage. You always get those photos first, and then try and satisfy your own desires afterwards.
There's a lot of little fish, so there's been a lot of rain over the last couple of years. Good spawning. I mean, fishermen say, oh shit, look at all these tiny little fish, but it's a good sign. How many other places in the world where you can catch fish like that?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Wild fish, you know, not tame things. I mean, I fished in England. You pay your 200 quid and you walk down to the water and bloody fish come up and look at you because they think you're going to feed them. They're out of the fish farm on Monday. Whereas here, these things are really wild creatures. They don't really know man at all.
So what is that? Is that one of those nymph things, is it?
Yeah. Something amazing if you're interested in flies.
Wouldn't hold barra very well, that one.
Oh, well, I mean, as you well know, people are catching barra on flies and on lighter and lighter tackle, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
But look at this.
Much bigger hooks, though.
I mean, this is the subtlety of fly fishing. I've got a fly that's so small in here I can't find it.
Is that one of those ones with
one of the
two,
world champion fly fishermen gave that to me. I mean, look at that. Oh, can't even see it. And
we use that to catch the fly.
Well, the theory is, yeah, the theory is that you can catch that.
That is small.
You can catch a 6-pound fish on that.
In early summer, the high peaks still have patches of snow on them. Visiting anglers from around the world come to the Tasmanian highlands in the summer months. After winter and the rigours of spawning, the fish are hungry. Fishing guides provide a service for those new to an area. The Tasmanian guides are well organised. One of those involved with guides and tourism is Richard Dax.
Well, I think there's going to be some spinners around. I'd use black spinner or an emerging dun.
I've got an emerging dun.
Well, that's what I pop on the end. What did you have on?
A dun, an emergent dun. He's a nice little fish.
Yeah, good solid fish.
Don't do anything, no? Oh, I'm keeping him. I'm definitely keeping him. I have to prove back at the office that I do actually catch a fish occasionally.
I know why I prefer to fish with flies and fly tackle. I often wonder how others who are smitten by this pastime explain their obsession.
Well, look, this. Isn't it terrific? It isn't for the fish, I can assure you. And listen, there's hardly anything. I mean, how many places now in the world can you go to where you can hear nothing, just the wind, lake water lapping, a little bit of bird song. Last night I was fishing in the sunset. There were no fish. It was hopeless. It was dead quiet, and it was like the third runway at Mascot. The swans were landing in 1s and 2s and 3s, and there was this hell of a noise. My wife said, "What's that?" She thought it was light aircraft. And they were coming in like big 747s, and I've never heard a swan land before. I didn't know they made noise. Now, only a fly fisherman will know that, because he's farting around, you know, creeping around, not making any noise himself in places where he shouldn't really be. That's why you fly fish. At the end of it, you should feel good. You should feel relaxed. You know, if someone says, "Did you have a good day?" and they're a fly fisherman, they don't mean, "Did you catch a lot?" They mean, "Did you have a good day? You know, was it good?" And of course, it always is. Even a howling gale is something to look at.
Lake St Clair is a glacier lake, the deepest lake in Australia, in fact, and it's placed within the World Heritage Area boundary of the Cradle Mountain Lakes National Park. We see outdoor activities, nature-based activities, if you like, as being very important to Tasmania. And it will, of course, help with our employment, which is, we don't read the best figures certainly in Australia. We don't perhaps have the industry or the population base to support it. But indeed, these nature-based tourism things such as fishing employ some 17,000 people within the state, the tourism industry at the present time. And our 10-year plan to 2005, we estimate there'll be some 30,000 by the time that comes around. So it's a big increase in tourism and a big increase in employment as a consequence. Tasmania generally is the finest wild brown trout fishery in the world, and it's known as such. That's not just from my lips, but from the 19 competitors in the World Fly Fishing Championships here some 6 years ago. And the wildness of the fishery and the beauty of the scenery makes it exceptional in world terms, with fine quality fish in terms of genes and fighting ability, and they're virtually disease-free. So it's a very fine fishery, difficult, clear water, wild fish, makes the fishing very difficult, but a challenge, and in the midst of some of the world's finest scenery.
Unlike many of the world's great trout fishing waters, access to the lakes of the Tasmanian Highlands is open to anyone. All it requires is a current fishing licence. The best of these waters is only a 2-hour drive from Hobart in the south or Launceston in the north. Good roads give access to all of the lakes in variable weather conditions. The language of fishing is spoken in the Highlands. In the summer months, it dominates most conversations. Dedicated fishing lodges are relatively new. Local businesses are beginning to cater to the demands of travelling fly fishermen. It was not always so. The history of trout in Tasmania is long, but for almost 100 years it remained virtually unknown to fishermen from the mainland. There is a museum dedicated to the history of trout fishing in the Antipodes. This museum is on the site of the original hatchery built in 1862. The influence of the English on fly fishing in Australia can be seen in this museum. Gradually, an Australian fly fishing identity has evolved. This can be traced through the changes in popular fly patterns on display. Early English patterns imitated insects found in Europe. Today, most flies used in Tasmania are specific imitations of trout food items found on the menu of these Tasmanian fish. Trout fishing is a sport of the summer months. Winter is a time for tying flies and stocking boxes for the next season. In this game, you become close to the cycle of the seasons. Fishermen are always looking for new experiences. Adventurous anglers from Europe and America are gradually discovering fly fishing the Tasmanian way.
It's my first Tasmania trout.
That doesn't get bad enough.
Yeah.
I don't know after the way that one went.
We may have to swim if we get dead.
Oh, no.
The northern coastal plains are braided by numerous streams and rivers. These streams are home to many small trout. The area is also called home by one of fly fishing's rarer devotees, a woman. Jan Spencer's passion for the sport means that she is out fishing at least 5 days a week. Much of this time is away from home on the inhospitable Western Lakes.
There was an old fly rod in the cupboard. I used to go out to the local river and try to fish with it, and it took 9 months to catch my first small, and I mean small brown trout. And then on I was hooked. I particularly like this area from the end of October till Christmas time because of the tailing fish you get right in close with their backs out of the water and that sort of thing. This particular lake, Lake K, is down a bit at the moment, but when it's full it can be absolutely brilliant fishing. Whether I catch fish or not, I just like being out on the water, and I learn something every time I go.
The area known as the Western Lakes is made up by the walls of Jerusalem National Park and the Central Plateau Conservation Area. Only one small section is accessible by vehicle. There are some 3,000 lakes in this region. Not all of them contain trout, but many do. Most lakes are connected by natural gutters. The fish use these as highways when they flood in late winter and spring. All season long is prime time for finding brown trout feeding in the shallows. The weather up here is a constant worry. Lives are lost mostly to exposure and hypothermia when snowstorms and fog banks come out of nowhere in midsummer. This is a desolate, windswept wilderness with great beauty in small details. It remains forever in the memory of those who hike in. Take no risks up here. Use the best maps and modern navigation aids available, and always let someone know where you're going.
My husband and I got snowbound out here at Christmas 3 years ago. We had the right equipment to survive, but if you didn't have the right equipment, you would perish. That's how severe it can become. I always tell people that never to leave their coat on, even in summertime, in a bright sunny day, never leave the car without the coat. Just carry a small pack, a day pack on your back, but have your coat. It can save your life.
Fishing in the lakes that are accessible by vehicle or a short walk is exceptional when the weather is good. The rarely fished far western lakes are the home of real trophy trout, but they are not prolific. Only the very dedicated make it to this wild place. Nick Hall is a professional fly tyer from Victoria. He's been coming to the Tasmanian Highlands for years.
Back in the early 80s, I was a bit younger than what I am now, and I suppose I was influenced a lot by the history of Tasmania and what it was all about. You hear things like Little Pine, and you dreamt of waters that you could principally go out there and have it all to yourself. Big fish, heaps of them. You'd hear stories of when the guys came back with 20, 30 fish in an afternoon, and duns popping up everywhere. Whether they were true or not, it didn't really matter. It was the flavour. I think it's like selling something, you know. You've got to have that bit of sizzle, and it's that sizzle that builds up inside you, that anticipation. I'm going to go and see it. I'm going to go to do it. You get the maps out, you study it, and you tie your flies up, and you get everything perfect, and away you go. And when you get there, you come back to realism again that, yeah, it's just as nice as what they said, but you've got to work it out. No one's going to work it out for you. And we found that Tassie, well, it wasn't really easy because it was so different to what we'd been experiencing back at home. It's another world. It's all lake fishing where we were concentrating on lakes, but mostly on rivers back at home. And it was a real eye-opener to us, and it was a real learning curve to us. We expected to come back with heaps of fish on the first couple of trips, but that learning curve came in, and it was softly, slowly, you know. And as the seasons went by, we just kept on coming over each year. We learned about more waters, we learned about more of the techniques that they use over here, and more of the techniques that we developed over here looking for the fish. And things started to fall into place, so that when, you know, after 3 or 4 trips, we were starting to get into decent fish. The insect life and the bird life down here is prolific compared to what it is on the mainland. I think it's just the nature of the place. There's a few degrees colder and cooler, and the climate, it kind of enhances it all, you know. You come up into an area like this where you're verging on wilderness country. You've got very little pollution factor up here. You don't have insecticides and this sort of stuff. And the waters are alive with food. They've got terrific food contents. Remember yesterday when we had that little bit of backwater there that we were looking at down at Bronte. The little stick caddis and the nymphs, and it's just a sample of what I'm talking about. Look.
See, there's some life in there, Mick.
It's a food bin, an absolute food bin. There's millions of them.
What are these little stick-looking things swimming around?
Little stick caddis, all different types. Little fellas. There's some of the big yellowy ones down
These
there.
are the ones that make their home in a piece of hollow grass,
Yeah,
is that right?
Just these weeds like this, they'll actually snap a bit off and get a little bit of it. And they'll actually live in there.
It's hollow.
Look at this one here. You know, the famous Tasmanian fly tyer by the name of Dick Wigram
Yeah.
tied up a pattern to match this years ago. Actually used a bit of straw.
Right.
He bound it onto the hook and a little bit on there for the head and a bit of hackle fibres for the legs.
I think I got some of them in my box. I bought them in Cressy many years ago.
Yeah, but they're still available. The pattern's been so successful it hasn't died away.
Yeah.
But when the trout are feeding on these critters, they'll actually gorge themselves on them, more so than what they do on the flying adults. It's one of the most underused fly patterns we have in our boxes today. It should be used more. And you can see by the amount of it here, it's an easy source for as a food form for fish, and all sorts of fish like it, whether it be natives or trout. You know, that's just that one there. He builds it in like a little square rectangle type little castle. All
That
it does
is extraordinary. Yeah.
yeah, all it does is it gets little chips of the grasses and sticks them together around.
You can see it wriggling around inside.
Yeah,
there.
amazing, isn't it?
There's a is that a spent spinner? Right there in the middle there?
Yeah. Let's see if we
So what's happened there?
should we lift her out?
It's a female, is it?
Should imagine. I should imagine.
But it's finished laying its eggs, or?
See if we can pick her up on here.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. She is truly what we call a spent spinner.
So what is a spent spinner?
Well, the female, when she's finished, she's laid her eggs and that's it for her. She's going to die now, unfortunately. Nothing we can do about it. We can't take it to a vet and fix it up, Pete.
Yeah.
It's finished. That's nature. They call them mayflies, ephemera, to live for a day.
Right.
You know, they come out of the nymphs, they go into the duns hatch out into the spinners, and then the spinners mate and the life cycle goes on again.
In summer, this far south, the days are long and the fishing opportunities seem almost endless. You work the shallows like a heron, totally alert for the slightest movement. The white wink of a fish opening its mouth, the faintest twitch of a blade of grass, or the merest wrinkling of the surface. This is the unique style of trout fishing in Tasmania. On some days, every fish will present a new challenge. On other days, there may be a pattern, but they'll never be easy. Wild fish evolve instincts that hatchery-reared fish don't get a chance to use. These instincts are deep in the genetic pool and are imprinted over many generations. Their endless suspicion and alertness makes these wild Tasmanian browns something special. They seem to suspect everything. The more difficult it is to get a trout to eat your counterfeit insect, the deeper you get drawn into this arcane world. I can't get past the thrill of the moment when a fish examines the fly and then eats it. In the world of fly fishing and trout, it just doesn't come any better than this. The great American fly fisherman and author Lee Wolf summed it all up pretty well when he declared, "A fish is too valuable to be caught only once." Off you go. There he goes. We're in a bay in the Tasmanian Highlands. The water is absolutely gin clear. We've got blue skies, bright sunshine, and in this bay there's probably at least a dozen fish feeding. We can see them, they're very shy, and I've changed flies probably 10 times in an effort to get them to take the right one, and finally found it, a little green nymph, and I got an instant response. This is incredible fishing, and these are the strongest brown trout I've ever come across. Often when trout take the fly, the fight can be a real anticlimax, but these wild fish are a real handful. They strip line off the reel in fast runs and slog it out in the shallows. Tasmania is a place you need to return to several times before you can consistently begin to catch fish. There is a higher degree of skill involved in fly fishing in this environment. Wind and cold can be a problem, but these are nothing compared with the slippery elusiveness of these brownies. These fish can really dent your confidence. If you're not an experienced fly fisherman, this is not the place you visit once and expect to catch fish. Nor is it the place to come to learn the basics of fly fishing. You'll need some skills before you get here. In Tasmania, a good day's fishing might be measured only in the number of fish you get to cast to without spooking them. My first trips to Tassie were a frustrating affair. So many fish seen for so few landed. Every fish presents a new challenge. You tune into each movement. The twitch of a fin or the flicker of a tail can be interpreted different ways. On some days, they will all require a different approach. Such days linger in the memory longer and stronger than other events in a fisherman's life. With time, these images are distilled into the essential moments. A perfect cast, the refusal of a fly or a slashing take, then the golden flanks and red spots of a wild brown trout. The management of all fisheries need to consider the value of fish in terms far beyond the sale price in a shop window. In Tasmania, this trout fishery and the world it sits in is priceless.